Hello everyone, Hazza here and welcome back to my channel. It's Pick'ems time, everyone's favourite time, and on this occasion we're off to sunny Santiago, Chile. We check out how it ended up last time. That was the gold killjoy buddy for everyone who followed along with my choices. Seoul has been very good to us, as was America's in Stage 1 last time. We went to Toronto, and now we're off to Chile. Let's take a look at the rewards that we're going to be getting for Pick'ems, and see if it's going to be worth it. So, we have the...
Cachando todo,
which means catching everything. Rico Po buddy, which looks like some kind of a Chilean pocket dish. We have a gold version of it, and the 100% title as always. So in the 20% is where we want to land so we can get the gold buddy. It would be silly to expect that we get the 100% title, but here's to hoping we would be the first content creator in history to actually get fully correct picks. It's not going to be helped by the format though. We are heading back to Swiss, and unlike the Kickoff Masters from last year, we've moved up to 3 teams per region, which is one of the key changes in the 2026 format. And while it's going to make for much more entertaining matches, much more competitive matches, it doesn't help us playing the fool's game of Pick'ems. The best chance that we're going to get at staying towards that upper 20% is correctly selecting the team which will go undefeated, the 2-0 team. Because there will be a couple of those, but as I alluded to earlier, it is complete RNG as to who gets faced against who, and with that in mind, maybe one of the teams you were thinking is going to go 2-0 loses to someone else, and vice versa, right? The draw could be really nasty if you don't pick the 4 teams correctly and get a little bit lucky on the way, which is what Pick'ems are always about. But without further ado, let me give you the rundown on all of the teams through the bracket and see who I think is going to move into the playoff stage. Starting off with our first game, Gentlemates versus EDG. It is no secret that I have been backing Gentlemates quite heavily in Kickoff 2026 so far, and heading into Masters, I think that very much remains to be true. I've done a couple of interviews with Glyph and Paco, one of their players, and the coaching staff as well. You can check that out with the card in the corner. But I think when you look at how this team has performed, going toe-to-toe over 5 maps with a BBL team, which when we get onto the playoff stage, I am also very excited about. And Fnatic, there's no reason really not to be excited about the potential of this team. They've been playing a fantastic read on the current meta. Martine, as a Yoru specialist, slots in beautifully. Glyph, who I already mentioned, has been playing exclusively Astra. And these are agents which just fit so nicely into the identity that they really want to create. It's almost been a perfect storm in terms of how things have fallen together. Having Starso as the in-game leader now, but still with a few vocal pieces within the team, has meant that he's been able to call a little bit more carefree. They're playing with freedom. They look confident. He's an emotional leader, so I think it takes some of that extra weight off players like Mini before, where they didn't have the chance to be the star player because they were also trying to lead the team at the same time. Speaking to their coach Paco, it feels like he's very level-headed and has created such a facilitating environment to get the best out of his players, and I can only hope that that continues into Santiago. I suppose the one caveat that's maybe pulling me back from wanting to say that they're going to be an immediate challenger if it gets to the playoff stage is because there is a severe lack of experience in these arenas. Now, sure, Starso did win champions, but that was back, what, 5 years ago now? And it was in the offline era, I suppose, without the crowds, where everything was behind closed doors, and Valorant has evolved. It's a very different game now. On the flip side, they are the form team. It feels like absolutely everyone is fragging. You've not only got Martine dropping numbers which broke the kill record originally set by their round 1 opponent, Kung Kung, in Champs 2024, but you have a partnership with Bippo where it feels like both of them are really supportive of one another and their natural strengths. Bippo playing different agents instead, like the Waylay, which is finding a pretty comfortable place in the current meta. So overall, I think Gentlemates are looking fantastic, but we've got to speak about EDG here too. It's been a really interesting kickoff for them heading into Santiago. I think back to their previous meta read in Champs last year when Gianni was still in the team, and it felt like a lot of the time they were trying to shoehorn themselves into something that really didn't work with the players that they had, the double duelist, but a little bit more neon Yoru at that time, I think. Now on this occasion, with CB coming into the team, it feels like a much more natural fit. You have someone who is willing to play the Yoru on a lot of maps, and that actually frees up Kang to do what he does best. He likes to play the neon, which has found a unique place in the current meta now with the fall off of many initiators, including Breach specifically. You get the same stuns plus all of the positive traits that a diving duelist would give you, and we know that from his previous performances he is one of the best neon players in the world, coupled with the fact that that extra lack of utility means you have so many more open sight lines, so many more chances to get on a sniper, and that in tow has also promoted the ability for him to play a little bit more chamber. So you see these big performances coming out from him as well when he needs them. I say it's been an interesting time for EDG because they ended up qualifying in the third and final spot that they could possibly pick up. All Gamers took it through the top of the bracket, XLG, who we'll get onto in just a moment, through the middle bracket, and EDG really had to find themselves as they were sort of rolling along in this lower bracket, which did then culminate in Kang dropping ridiculous numbers against BLG to secure their spot. And that's the part that has me racking my brain. Are they going to be able to deliver these huge numbers on the big stage again, where he has that experience against a Gentlemates team that maybe haven't been there before, but are in a ridiculous sense of form themselves? Honestly, when it comes down to it, I think I'm probably leaning more towards Gentlemates, and maybe this doesn't come as a surprise to many of you, but I'm quite happy to at least put them in as one of my early teams. I've fortunately been invited by Riot to co-stream Masters Santiago, so you'll be able to catch all of the matches live on my stream on both YouTube and Twitch, so make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and follow me on Twitch if that's your preferred streaming service. There will also be a link in the description to join my Pick'ems leaderboard, so you can go ahead and brag to everyone else in the comments section about why you're so much smarter than I am. Jokes aside, let's get back to the video. Next up, we have XLG versus NRG. This is a game which, in my mind, I find somewhat difficult to place, but I also feel like it has a fairly clear-cut answer when you actually start to think about it a little bit more. We'll start with XLG. Few people know them as America's Killers because they managed to beat Sentinels at Champs last year, but I also feel like the title is a little bit disingenuous when you look at their previous record, spanning back to Toronto when they did lose to Sentinels there, and also G2 as well. They've kept the core of No Man, Raga, and Happyway, but they've brought in WS Leo and Lysor, familiar names in VCTCN. We saw Lysor at this time last year go on that deep run with Wolves, and I feel like that's been one of the few times that I've actually backed a Chinese team to do well in that event. If you remember, I had them as a top 4 placing team, not top 3, which they ended up eclipsing even my expectations, but this team maybe doesn't have the same kind of vibe to it. XLG would have come into this year in VCTCN probably as the favourites. They ended up going through the middle bracket to qualify as they lost to an All Gamers team, which when you go back and look at some of the Valorant they've been playing, incredibly off-piste, really surprising. Whereas XLG are a lot more of that common double duelist style of Valorant now that we've actually seen make its name in 2026, where you're playing a lot of Neon. There's Waylay in there as well. I think it's been nice to see No Man play a bit more duelist when we saw him in Champs Paris, mainly on the Sky and sort of the other initiator roles, but as much as this suits them, I don't know if I can see them upsetting an NRG team which are playing a very different brand of Valorant. In terms of what they're doing, it's a lot of double initiator, it's a lot of what we've known before. They're bringing out Teho on a lot of maps, which I find interesting because I did place him in my head as one of the stronger initiators now with the changes to utility cooldowns. It doesn't feel as harsh on the salvos anymore, and you know, with the strength of his drone and his ultimate, of course, the rest of his kit does give you a lot of opportunities to make things really difficult for your opponents. They've been playing a lot of solo Waylay, and now when you look at it globally and who's actually been running Waylay as a solo duelist, NRG stand out far and away the best of the teams to do it, and I think a lot of that comes down to having Mada be such a great pilot for the agent. There's a very specific theory required to make this composition work, because a lot of the time the Waylay is just solo diving in, and if the support isn't there, then you're really going to struggle. But that's also where the explosive nature of Teho's kit and how rapidly you can take space actually really sets them up quite nicely to thrive here. We wouldn't be talking about NRG without the transfer that they made, of course, as well. Kiko coming into the team for Som. Immediately, that change says to me that you're losing a massive voice in the server and a really key part of this NRG team. But Kiko has been working individually on his own comms, his own, ideas that he brings to the team. He said straight away, joining NRG, that he had to be a lot more vocal and really help contribute to the calling system, as Ethan hasn't been an in-game leader for the longest of times, at least in NRG in Champs Paris. That was the first real big event where you'd actually seen him step up and be that guy. Of course, when he won with EG before, it was Boostio leading the team. But just the amount of firepower on this roster in general, their ability to bounce back from situations of adversity, the reverse sweep against MIBR to qualify, albeit against a very burnt-out MIBR team, which had played multiple best-of-5s at that point in time, makes me feel really confident in them as well. Bonkar as the coach, strong in the backroom staff as well. It just feels like a recipe for success, and they're another team which I want to go ahead and put into my 1-0 bracket, at least for now. It should come at no surprise to the average VCT watcher that G2 Paper X makes its way into yet another opening round. It is the 5th time that we'll have seen them face against each other in the opening stage of an international event, spanning all the way back to Shanghai. Now, the first couple of those wins went to G2, but in recent history, it has actually been Paper X winning this matchup, and I think that kind of leans into where I'm thinking this one is going to end up going. We'll start off with G2 though. They actually had a pretty good stage, all things considered. When you look at the change that they made, Jonah P for Baby Bay, a lot of the decision around that being based on the vibes, I suppose. Even though they cut a player which had been part of the core since the guard, it felt crazy to a lot of people, but we did see them get to reap the rewards of that decision ultimately in the end. G2 are another team which have been playing a lot of the solo Waylay, albeit not to the same level of success as NRG. At the very least, on Split, we saw them end up making a change. They moved away from running the Breach with double initiator to actually just bringing in a Neon and going for a full double duelist look instead. I think with Jonah P in the team previously, yeah, maybe you'd want to have gone for the Breach, but didn't look like it was working too well for them. Jorgamo has always been a duelist specialist. Feels like he can run any of those agents right out of the box, and that always gives G2 a leg up in terms of what they're able to go for. And yeah, his Waylay actually was pretty decent on Bind. It's one of a few maps which they're undefeated on. They have more reps on Bind than some of the other ones in their pool though. They are a team which, because of their success in the upper bracket, maybe don't have as many official reps on certain maps as other teams. I look at their Pearl and their Haven, for example, having played them only one time, and it makes you wonder how that's going to look versus a Paper X, which do have the reps. The other side to the coin, of course, is the fact that there's plenty of tape on Paper X. It's going to work for them in the way that they're able to prepare a little bit better, review their mistakes. Paper X is a team which scales incredibly well in events. We saw how they went from struggling in Toronto, being a couple rounds away against Liquid, crashing out, to winning the grand final against Fnatic and looking like the best team in the world at that time. So the question on my mind really is this a Paper X team which is up to the task? I'm thinking about something particularly as someone who I put in my VFL team, and for the first few weeks was not worth the price point that I paid for him whatsoever. He's had a pretty torrid time so far from kickoff, and heading into Santiago, you want to see if he can lift that level a little bit. Always someone who's been incredibly good in clutch situations, likes to play with the op quite a lot, but really struggled in a lot of first engagements, I think, against some of the other really divey teams that make it difficult for him to post up on an angle. You don't get that same value from him late round then anymore if he's always going down first. And I think Paper X just kind of needs to find a way to build him up as much as possible, because when he is in full form, then he's the guy that you want to take G2 apart, and sort of the antithesis, the stylistic clash, which is going to be able to beat them. This opening round is a real toss-up for me. I am not too sure who I want to move through, and honestly, when I look at these teams, I feel like I want to include them as both advancing anyway, but I will get to that in just a bit. For now, though, I am going to say that Paper X can do what it takes to recover from their mistakes and beat this G2 team. Final game of our confirmed opening rounds before we get into the speculative portion where we have to figure out who exactly is going to go to playoffs at the end of all of this, who gets eliminated, and most importantly, who goes 2-0 out of the two possible options. Team Liquid versus T1. And immediately, I'm leaning towards T1 on this. Look, we'll talk about both of these teams. Each of them have had their trials and tribulations in kickoff, I think it's fair to say. T1 started off by losing their opening games and sort of dropping down into this middle portion of the bracket off the back of a defeat to Nongshim, and it had a lot of people really worried. Then they bounced back against Paper X, and actually we started to see things come good for them. Wins against DFM, RRQ, put them in a possible situation to end up qualifying, and yeah, they have to be looking on the up heading into Santiago. The core of this T1 team made themselves Masters Bangkok winners last year, playing a brand of Valorant which is now commonplace. I've spoken about it a lot in this video, but they were playing a lot of Double Duelist and a lot of Yoru as well. Izu has found himself as a specialist of an agent, which is right at the forefront of the metagame at this point in time, offering flashes, quick rotations, a chance to get the op active, all factors which fit really, really nicely into where everything currently sits. They did experiment a little bit. We saw Meteor playing Waylay on Abyss, but when that initial experiment didn't go well, it actually looked much better against RRQ in the end. He dropped 38 kills in what was a prolonged overtime, but he top-fragged for the team, and it looked like the support was there for him. The agent pool does get a bit weird when you've got Stax playing Teho, Izu on the Sova, and then you're also running the Double Duelist with Meteor not on an anchor anymore. But somehow they've managed to find a way to actually find value from it. I would be lying if I said I don't sometimes have some concerns about the firepower on this team, as Stax is no longer the in-game leader, so he doesn't get that get out of jail free card that he used to when he wasn't contributing, but you always expect him to at least give a little bit more in the comms side of things and what he actually brings experience-wise, with Munchkin now IGLing, hopping over the fence from Gen G to reinforce this T1 side. And look, they have had the steely resolve to make it through after that initial setback and clearly have found a version of the game that works for them at this point in time. And then you have to compare that to Team Liquid and the run that they had in kickoff. Not only did they have a difficult start, but things only got worse for them. They dropped down into the lower bracket of EMEA and had to make it through several difficult teams that had bested them before, like Vitality, like Fnatic in the end, with a clean 3-0 sweep in their final game. Miniboo has been hitting levels that we've not really seen from him since 2024, and there's a finger of blame being pointed in Heretic's direction now as to why did you get rid of him heading into this year. Now that's a completely different conversation topic in and of itself, but what I will say is that Miniboo looks like he's playing his best Valorant on this Liquid side right now. If there's anything that you can give to Nats, it's always that he finds a way to get the best out of the players that he has available to him. This is now, what, his third rebuild in the last 3 years of partnerships, so absolutely no stranger to having to work in a team environment which is constantly in a state of flux. That's also part of my concern, though. Yes, there is now consistency with this team. The priorities in the construction of this roster was increasing the level, raising the bar in terms of professionalism, but I feel like some of the pieces just don't quite fit when you look at the compositions that they're trying to run, the ideas that they're bringing to the table. I have to say, I've been kind of impressed with Camo's Fade, his initiator in general. It's strange to see him on something other than a duel list, but in actual fact, he's also been playing a lot of Yoru in this team as well. Someone else who tried a fake clone on a big stage before, that was against Paper X in Toronto, and it ended up paying dividends for them. It's such a weird one to try and think about, because I feel like Liquid do have this aura about them that they are pretty good actually at winning really scrappy games and slowly chugging along in that lower bracket. But in Swiss, it's really unforgiving sometimes, and I think against the T1 team, which have proved that they are performing at a level expected of them in a meta which suits them, against the Liquid side, which still from time to time has had some fairly weak performances in kickoff, I still struggle to put them too much higher in my estimations, and for that reason I think Liquid are not going to be winning this first game. It's T1 that go 1-0 to start. So where does that put us? Because we can only pick 4 teams in the end, and as you see, I've only put 3 on this graphic so far. So let's start off with our 2-0 candidate and who I think it's going to be. Well, at least based on the first round matchups that we've already seen, I feel like the Paper X G2 one is cut a little bit too fine for me to say that one of the winners of that is going to go ahead and go 2-0, because maybe it's just a little bit too risky. We got to play the game at the end of the day. NRG have a really nice start against XLG. I don't know who they're going to get paired against either. I'm just going to full send it, man. I'm going to go with Gentlemates for my 2-0 pick, because I've been really liking what I've seen from them so far. The meta suits them really nicely. There's a great vibe, great energy in the team in general. Yes, that big stage feels daunting, but it's pick'ems at the end of the day, and sometimes you do have to take a risk if you want a reward. So that then frees up another space of a team that I think is going to qualify. And our remaining options would be EDG, Gli, G2, T1, or Team Liquid, because at least looking at these other two, I feel pretty confident in NRG, and if I'm picking Paper X to go ahead and beat G2, then they should be set up at least to find a way to qualify. That's my logic at the very least. I am probably then going to pick G2 as well. I've got 2 Americas teams, a Pacific team, and an EMEA team in my list here. I'm not too sure. What do you guys think? Do you feel like these picks are appropriate? At this stage in the year, as someone who's been watching a lot of Pacific, a lot of EMEA, these are the ones that I feel more comfortable with, at least, but still kind of difficult to wrap my head around it. Look, maybe I might even pivot from like a Paper X to a T1. It's hard to choose at this point in time, but as always, if I do make any changes, you will be the first to see them if you turn on notifications and subscribe to the channel, because that is right, I am going to be co-streaming all of Masters Santiago, as I did for all of the Game Changers Championship and all of Champions Paris as well. The VODs are available on my channel in playlists and whatnot, but I'm very excited to be getting back into the co-streaming and following these teams through their journeys. It's been so nice to get a look at some of them already in kickoff, and I hope that you will all be kind enough to join me there. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to move through in this Swiss stage. It feels like it's so difficult to confidently predict who it is that progresses at this stage in the year. Always, that's how kickoff tends to be. I somewhat feel a little bit more confident that I can get it right by the time we arrive in playoffs. But for now, this is the 4 that I'm going to go with. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. Leave a like. And as always, I will see you in the co-streams. Much love and goodbye for now.